My attitude towards risk, I think, is that you need to know what the worst possible downside is to the risk you're going to take. And if you can live with that worst possible downside, then by all means go for it. If you don't think you can, then don't go for it.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Gift Show.
I did take out a large business loan, £80,000 bank loan.
The theme for season 9 is Money Matters.
A large 5-figure amount was lost.
My guest today is David Henson.
Don't go into a business that you don't know anything about. And
David, in many years in business, have you ever made an investment or spent money in your business that you later regretted and said,
yes.
This is a big mistake on my part?
Yeah. So I've been in business since 1986. So that's nearly 40 years now. And yeah, I think a couple of big decisions I made that kind of went wrong. There was one, actually one that didn't actually go wrong. I did take out a large business loan, £80,000 bank loan in 1990 to expand the business. And that's just when a really nasty and sharp recession hit the country. And the business just plummeted for literally 13 months, from beginning of August 1990 to the end of August 1991. You can almost measure it in that time scale. And the bank weren't being very helpful, as they often aren't. I often say that banks sometimes are there to lend you an umbrella when it's not raining, and take it away when it is. But that's just my cynical thinking. And yeah, so we came very close to losing the business because of the recession and the debts. We didn't lose the business; we carried on. And strangely, after the end of August 91, the business just took off again. I'd laid off a couple of staff, and the sixth year of so actually the fifth year, that was the fifth year of the business, and I made a bigger loss in that fifth year than I've made profit in the first 4 years put together. And then the sixth year, it took off again. So it was quite a scary time. So I think that, and the bank, funnily enough, said, when they were talking about the loan, I said to them, they said to me rather, you should have seen the recession coming. And I thought, these people work in the financial industry, they probably should have seen the recession coming as well. But one of the things you do end up doing is learning more about business in those sort of times than when times are good.
And did you manage to repay the loan eventually, or did the bank agree to a partial write-off?
Yeah, no, we paid it all back. It was all good. It was just that scary 13 months, and we got to one point where we had bailiffs knocking at the door to collect. I think it was a VAT payment, if I remember rightly. So yeah, it got very, very close to going pear-shaped, shall we say? Yeah.
Do you recommend that people remortgage their home in order to finance a business expansion or a new venture?
No, I don't recommend that. I mean, that must have been when I first started my business. I remember because my wife's very risk averse, so I wanted to start business, but I wanted to get her on side. So I remember cooking her a meal and sitting down and telling her all my plans, and she was eating the meal, and I basically got left on the plate because I was telling her about my plans. And she said at the end, she kind of said, "Yeah, well, that's what you want to do, but never put the house on the line." And I agreed that I never would. The issue is, though, I suppose, that even if you don't put the house on the line, if you are taking out large loans, which you've still got to give a personal guarantee on those loans, and if you've no other way of paying them back, then you may well be putting your house on the line anyway, even if you're not actually signing it over. But I wouldn't recommend that. But then, of course, it depends on your outlook as far as risk is concerned, isn't it? Some people are willing to take that risk, throw everything at it, and if that's your attitude, then great, go for it. My attitude towards risk, I think, is that you need to know what the worst possible downside is to the risk you're going to take, and if you can live with that worst possible downside, then by all means go for it. If you don't think you can, then don't go for it.
have you ever put yourself into jeopardy in terms of, putting personal money into a business and then not seeing a return on it?
Yeah, yeah, I did that. I got involved in a business. It was, well, I won't go into the whole story because it will take too long. But I got involved in an aquarium shop business with a friend of mine who was working for someone else doing that kind of thing at the time. We were setting up an online shop, but then we got the opportunity to set up a bricks and mortar shop in a garden centre, which we did, and I sunk money into it. Also, more importantly, I sunk time into it without getting any return. It was a really bad decision and a big mistake on my part. And yeah, the money, basically the company is now closed down. It lasted about 10 years. It kind of bumbled along, breaking even, but with the directors like myself and my partner having to put money in, and that money was lost. So yeah, a large five-figure amount was lost. And I suppose the learning from that is twofold. One is that don't go into a business that you don't know anything about, and I suppose also, I mean, I spent a lot of time working on the business, mostly doing the marketing and not getting anything out of it. So, that's the other lesson from it as well. But that's it. But again, you learn more from those kind of mistakes, as long as you don't make too many mistakes. I think it's like was it someone once said, if I've learned so much from making mistakes, I think I'm going to make a lot more, just so they learn more lessons. But probably not good advice.
Indeed. Do you recommend that people take a prudent attitude to money now, given the fact we are in, a time sphere of high interest rates?
Yeah, well, again, I think it depends what stage of your lifestyle you're at. So I'm at the end of my, not the end of my life, but the end of my career to a certain extent. I've paid off my mortgage, so I don't have to worry about mortgage rates anymore, thank goodness. And I have some savings. So for me, high interest rates are good, but I recognise the fact that 20, 30 years ago, for me, they wouldn't have been good because my mortgage rate would have gone up, and I recognise the fact that many people are in that situation now, and it's a tough situation to be in, especially when mortgage rates have gone up from like 0% to whatever it was, 6 or 7% in a very short space of time. So again, I think the problem with that is that a lot of people went into the mortgage market, young people, not having experienced high interest rates, and suddenly it's hitting them, and they're thinking, "Oh my God, what do we do about it?" When I got my first mortgage back in 1981, I can't remember what the mortgage rate was or what the interest rate was, but it certainly wasn't zero. So we knew about variable interest rates, and yeah, they did go up and down. And suddenly, of course, famously I think it was the late 80s when they suddenly went up to 15% for just one day, and then came down a bit afterwards. But that was just so volatile. So yeah, you can take a prudent attitude, but you just got to, I think you just got to be aware, as they say in the adverts, that interest rates can go up as well as down.
What's been your most successful personal or business investment over the years?
I suppose so going back to this first business I set up in 1986, the very first year of that business was very successful. I was producing slides. Back in the old days, we used to use 35mm slides, which went in a projector, physical slides. So if you're old enough to remember those, most people under the age of 40 go, "Ooh, what are you talking about? I don't understand what you're talking about." So I set up the company was called the Regent Slide Company, and I invested in a computer graphics system. It was £7,500, this system, which was quite expensive, considering it had two typefaces, 64 colours, didn't have a hard disk at all. It was an old Apple IIe. Well, it wasn't an old Apple IIe at the time. It was a brand new Apple IIe, and it had three and a 5.25-inch floppy disk drives to hold the system and to hold the slides we were making. But in that first year of business, I turned over £101,000, which is a great return on that investment. I was renting office space, which was shared with one of my co-directors. He already had a design and print company. So that first year was extremely successful. At our six-figure turnover, back in a time when in 1986 when six figures was a lot of money. um, so that just that little period was extremely, and then the business did grow, as I say, until that fifth year when the recession hit us. Um, and even that big loan I took out was ultimately a successful thing to do, a successful investment, because we upgraded all of our kit. We got lots of Apple Macs in at the time, which had a massive 80 megabyte hard disk with 8 megabytes of RAM, which was state of the art then. And we got in a lot of different kit, and that was a successful investment ultimately, even though it nearly went a bit pear-shaped in the first year.
You see the UK and Ireland, where there's a love of bricks and mortar, I suppose, and owning your own home. Do you ever see those two countries moving towards a more kind of continental European style, where people go into long-term rental or lease agreements, and then eventually the landlord will say, you have right to the property?
I don't know much about that area, to be honest, John, but you do see it, don't you? You do see nowadays a lot of people who are renting much more than they were in the 80s when I bought, and I think Margaret Thatcher wanted to make it a property owning country. So it certainly has become a lot more difficult now to buy property, clearly because of the price rises. But so I don't know a great deal about it. I know that from personal experience, my youngest son rented for a long time until he got himself a well-paid job, and now he has bought a place. But it's certainly more of a stretch, I suppose, in terms of the mortgage compared to your salary. Your mortgage is going to be a lot higher proportion now of your salary than it might have been back in the day. Which makes things more difficult. But then again, when you see about renting, when he was paying rent, he was paying the same amount in rent that he's basically paying now on a mortgage. So he could have afforded a mortgage. Just at the time, the institutions wouldn't have lent because he didn't have the backup behind him to prove that he could pay the mortgage, even though he could, because he was paying the rent, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. How did the cost of living crisis we've had in the last 12 or 18 months affect you, and how did you get around the increase in, say, grocery prices? Do you continue to shop in Waitrose or Sainsbury's, or have you looked at some of the more yellow label, I suppose, because of the Lidls, the Aldis of the world?
Yeah, it hasn't affected me too badly. I've been I say I've been lucky. I think it's just that because I'm getting older, and I've got a bit more money behind me, and I haven't got a mortgage to pay now. The worry has kind of gone away. So from my point of view, I'm lucky in that respect. I don't have to concern myself with cutting costs too much. But yeah, again, you understand from the point of view of people younger than me, worse off, who have really struggled. All the supermarkets have everything's gone up, isn't it? I'd say I'm not just going to blame the supermarkets. Every time you get a new bill come through, it's gone up. I mean, you can shop around to a certain extent. My car insurance was renewed recently, and it almost doubled. And I thought, why are they expecting me to carry on and renew it at that rate? And I managed to find a rate that was actually slightly cheaper than the rate I've been paying the year before.
Yeah, of course. And the other choice is Uber, but where you're living out there in Pettswood, out in Kent, you have the choice of suburban rail. And then as you go into central London, you have the tube. Now, of course, the prices of suburban rail travel in the UK have gone, it's gone quite expensive, particularly for the morning commute at rush hour.
Yeah.
How has that impacted your?
Well, another advantage of getting old, John, is that in London you get free travel. So when you get 60 plus, you get a free Oyster card. So after 9:30 every day, I can travel free on the trains and the tubes and the buses. So again, I'm lucky in that respect. So I just tap my Oyster card in and off I go.